You're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam. Streaming on iTunes and at facebook.com/DCAU Review. Now, here's today's episode.
Welcome to the DCAU Review. I am your host, Cal. Alongside me, as always, my good friend, brother, and the guy that runs our Twitter, Liam.
They call me Old Twitter Liam.
Old Twitter Liam. Liam,
Please
welcome.
don't call me that.
Don't ever call him that. Only to his Twitter face, please. Liam, welcome to episode, what are we on now, 12?
This would be 12, yeah.
12 of the DCAU Review. We're jumping around a little bit. We had kind of gone through chronologically through Batman the Animated Series, up through our 10th episode, 11th episode. Our last episode was on Last Son of Krypton. We kind of switched gears, started looking at some of the Superman animated series. We're staying in the Superman animated series universe here, but we figured we'd jump around a little bit. Some of those early Superman episodes are a little... I don't know. They have a sore spot, I think, in my memory banks from seeing them so many times, I think. So we decided to do some themed episodes instead of just following those episodes one by one. So we're going to start today. We're doing a Metallo-themed episode, or Kryptonite, or Lex Luthor. I think you can kind of classify it either one of those three. But we have two episodes we're discussing today, and super excited about it. Why don't you tell our audience what episodes they are?
So our first episode we're going to be talking about today is Little Piece of Home. It is the 5th episode, if you count Last Son of Krypton as 3 parts. First Kryptonite episode you introduced there, and then we moved on to The Way of All Flesh, which of course is the first Metallo episode. Both heavily feature Lex Luthor, both obviously centered around Kryptonite as a whole, and finding a way to make that interesting and not sort of just a repeated gag of Superman just...
Which, if you've ever read any of the Golden or Silver Age comics, even the Bronze Age, it's sort of a tired. They had by the time the Silver Age ended, they had 12 to 15 different colors of kryptonite, and they kind of introduced and used some of that in Smallville on the TV show. Which I know we both. You're a bigger fan of Smallville than I am. It holds a little near and dear to your heart than me, seeing as how you've also met the stars. Have we talked about that? Liam.
I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast. Yes, I paid money to go to Awesome Con in Washington, D.C. this year, and I got to meet Michael Rosenbaum, who listeners may know as The Flash.
Oh, yes, The Flash.
Or Ghoul from Batman Beyond for a deeper cut. But Michael Rosenbaum and Tom Welling, the stars of Smallville.
Clark Kent and Superman, Clark Kent and Lex Luthor, respectively.
Yeah, so that was awesome, and I got to shake their hands and say hello and get a picture with them. Yes, Smallville means a great deal to me, obviously.
So Kryptonite was, they used that kind of as a different plot device. I know they had the red Kryptonite, and they used, did they use purple too or something like that? I think
there was a purple. They definitely used blue at some point.
Yeah, and, so they sort of incorporated some of those older comic elements into that show. Superman, the animated series itself, kind of just sticks with the green Kryptonite. We don't get the different rainbow variety. But it's interesting in this first episode, A Little Piece of Home, the way that it's sort of introduced. The plot is that Lex Luthor has this rock in a museum that he uses to shelter shelter money for tax purposes. Which you talk about adult themes in a child's cartoon, man. Sheltering your money for tax purposes, hiding it in a non-profit museum that's a deep dive into a child's cartoon.
Talking about like shell companies and dummy corporations, and yes.
Well, Batman definitely was no stranger to those, that's for sure. So I guess it's just continuing in the tradition. You had definitely some references to those dummy corporations in various episodes with the mob and mafia.
Oh, sure. You think guys like Daggett or even Rupert Thorne or
certainly
people like that. Yeah, it's a recurring theme. The evil businessman, the guy who's not on the up and up. Is certainly no stranger to that in the DCAU.
So this first episode, A Little Place of Home, speaking of that not on the up and ups, features a lot of Lex Luthor in the episode. So why don't we jump right into the plot Actually, Liam, why don't you remind our listeners at home, just in case this is their first time listening to an episode, what's our 4 categories that we break down and give criteria for each episode of the DCAU?
Absolutely. So our 4 main categories are plot, animation. We've sort of expanded that into, if you want to call it visuals instead, you could, because we're going to talk about backgrounds and character design. And
we talked a little bit last episode about how Superman's animation style is much more streamlined than the original Batman the Animated Series, so it's a little harder to kind of judge because it's not supposed to be as realism, centered in realism, I guess. So I think adding that visual component definitely allows us for a little bit of more understanding.
Yeah, it's visual. It's all-purpose visuals category. We may still refer to it as animation just out of habit, but we're kind of mean just visuals as a whole. We also, of course, talk about music, and voice acting is the last category. Each category we rank from 0 to 10. I don't think we've ever given a 0, but...
came close with the Underdwellers. Came real close.
Yeah, but so basically our final score will be blank out of 40. Perfect. We can also occasionally we will add in a bonus point or 2 if there's something that isn't covered in those main 4 categories, and we just feel we need to give it a special shout out or an extra point, something that's not covered, but. Yeah, those are our 4 main categories, so let's jump right into plot.
Yeah, what did you think of we'll start with A Little Piece of Home, and then we'll jump later on, we'll talk a little bit about the second episode, but A Little Piece of Home, I thought the plot is it's very... For what they're doing, it was a fun episode. You have, they're introducing Kryptonite. You're giving Lex Luthor a little bit of depth in his character, revealing, he's clearly not on the up and up. He does a lot of dealings after he finds out that he's in possession of this meteor that affects Superman, his health. You see his influence in his science laboratory with the scientists that he works with, and clearly only interested in what can I get out of this in which I can sort of control Superman. There's some nice dynamic back and forth between him and Mercy, who I commented as we were watching it, dressed as a chauffeur 24/7. I think there's a scene later on in the World's Finest episode where she's in Lex's bedroom, while he's sleeping. Maybe she's supposed to be dressed as a bodyguard. Regardless, she's also a chauffeur. Right. She's also dressed as a chauffeur in that episode where she tries to protect Lex. From my recollection,
she's always in a short leather dress and a chauffeur's cap.
For whatever that is. Completely not out of place in a gentleman's business office, I gotta say. But, so you get some dynamic between Lex and Mercy. You get some dynamic between, Lex and the scientists. But it really fleshes out Lex as this guy who is sort of a puppet master. He's got one goal, is to control Metropolis. It's to maintain the power that he has. And it's done in a fun way. The episode itself is cool. There's a giant dinosaur robot that Superman has to fight at the end, which, going back to the Jack Sprang days of Batman Dick Sprang back in the 1950s and 40s, and with those giant sight gags, it's a cool visual. Superman, who doesn't want to see Superman fight a Tyrannosaurus Rex robot?
So it feels very Fleischer-y.
Absolutely.
And it makes for, as you mentioned, just something interesting to see a man quite literally grapple with a T-Rex. It's something that again would only really work with a character like Superman or
certainly.
One of those sort of super powerful characters. You couldn't really do that with a Batman or Spider-Man or something.
Although Batman does grapple with those giant crocodiles in the Underdwellers episode. Don't forget.
Please stop reminding me of that episode.
Sorry.
But yeah, for plot,
we need to have an Underdwellers jar. Every time it's mentioned, we put $1 in.
Yeah, we'll introduce that. We gotta have a sound effect, some sort of loud alarm that goes off.
Underdwellers alarm.
But yeah, so for plot here, I went 8 out of 10. It's really strong, as you mentioned. It pretty much pretty heavily focuses on Luthor sort of grappling with trying to figure out how he can still run his criminal empire in a world with a Superman. He finds a way to get an advantage on him, and then offers him a deal to just walk away, and of course Superman doesn't take that deal, and so he very matter-of-factly decides he's just going to kill him. And how else would you kill him but, stick a giant dinosaur on him? So
Right, exactly. Why not?
But I thought it was really, really excellent development for who Lex Luthor is. He's not the traditional mustache-twirling villain. He's not just a mad scientist. He's not a maniac. He's very calm and collected throughout most of this.
Absolutely. You pointed out actually before we went on the air that he doesn't get assigned like an evil villain laugh.
Yeah.
He doesn't get like he's not over the top Skeletor, evil villain. He's very understated, and that comes a lot with the performance. We can talk about it in voice acting, but the performance that Clancy Brown gives as Lex Luthor gives you a lot to say. He doesn't need to be over the top. He doesn't need to be goofy. I know a lot of people's one of their main critical points for Batman v Superman was Jesse Eisenberg's portrayal of Lex Luthor was just so off the wall. Yeah. And distracting to a point. I didn't hate it as much as everybody else seemed to, but I see it. Like when you have a guy like Clancy Brown who's there, he's menacing without being goofy. He doesn't draw attention to the fact that he's insane. He's more than likely an insane manipulator.
Yes, it's very. This is how it's going to be. This is the way the world works. This is the way I control my world. And there's nothing anyone can do about it. And so he's not, there's not a lot of big bug-eyed, he doesn't fly off in rage too often. He doesn't, as you mentioned, he doesn't laugh crazily either. It's a completely different category, and one that obviously really carried over into his portrayal in the comics. This is a pretty good example, I think, of how these shows influenced the things that they were originally influenced by as far as the source material goes. And I think obviously later on they did storylines where Lex Luthor becomes president in the comics, which then in turn was turned into a storyline for Justice League down the road. So you see the way these two things, the comics and these cartoons have a very symbiotic relationship.
Absolutely.
Of influence each other.
Absolutely. I don't know if I gave my score for the plot. I think because of taking something, an episode that's designed just about introducing a rock, a radiation-filled rock, they made it fun. We looked over at the end of it. There's the chase scene in the middle of the episode with where Lex introduces Kryptonite to Superman. It's a heist scene that takes place with rocket, rocket backpacks and crazy weapons and stuff. It's a fun episode. Because of that, I give it a 7 out of 10. All right, let's move on to let's talk animations and visuals, Liam. So this episode, as I just mentioned, the chase scene really stood out to me as a fun one for animation. The flight, around the city was great. I think there's weapons being fired while they're flying. It's a good. There's some cool visuals in it. I think I'm still just starting to get used to the idea that criminals in Metropolis don't wait for nighttime to do any criminal activity. It's broad daylight, and they're out there doing heists and stealing diamonds from museums, and stealing whatever it was something that they used to make the dollar bill, like a minting block or something like that. So they're stealing that, all in broad daylight. So there's no nighttime in Metropolis, apparently. Which,
as I think we mentioned in Last Son of Krypton, could be a detriment to the visuals because, as we mentioned sometimes in some of the early Batman episodes, the more light there is, sometimes the less good things look. So you have to add a little more detail, and Metropolis needs to feel, as you mentioned, it's not just blue sky and they're sort of flying in a straight line. They're weaving through the city and through the buildings and through the clouds. They really make the city, I think, feel alive in a way that maybe they didn't. Maybe it could also be a timing issue because the animation style was different. More focus was put on the individual character in the original Batman. But certainly they were able to really make Metropolis, and as you mentioned, a lot of the set pieces. The museum at night is there's a lot of a lot of detail in those backgrounds and everything. So they do a very good job of making it feel like it's you're watching a guy fly through the city, and it's not just two drawings moving across a sort of painted background.
Absolutely, yeah. And I felt the dinosaur scene in particular. I mean, that was can't imagine that's a very easy thing to animate.
Yeah.
You don't have a lot of visual evidence or reference points of how a dinosaur moves or whatever. So it's really off the cuff. And, because of that, gave it a 7. Good animation, good spots, nothing that truly blew me away, but that dinosaur scene, the robot dinosaur scene is really, really, really good.
Yeah, absolutely. I also gave it a 7 out of 10. We're on the same wavelength there. It's really solid. There's some really nice #Kate movement in the chase scene.
Now we're talking.
So I really like it. And the way Lois, she does like a basketball jump shot to throw the kryptonite into the lead cup to save Superman at the end.
Some good foreshadowing in the scene where she's in the office too, doing it into the wastebasket.
Yes.
That was,
that's a nice little bit, and another little bit we can go back to plot, I guess, a little bit, but that Lois saves Superman this time.
Yes.
He doesn't. She's as we mentioned in our episode on Last Son of Krypton. She is not the damsel or Superman's girlfriend who just constantly gets in over her head and has to be rescued. She's
a strong character.
Yes.
She's not the damsel in distress that needs rescuing every single episode. I think there's a lot of episodes where she does ultimately, but I think you're right. In this episode, it's cool to see that dynamic change where he saves her, and we'll actually see that going forward in the next episode as well. All right, moving on to music. Music was better this episode. We talked a little bit about it before going on the air that it was maybe that first episode, because of the production time or the way things were done, they relied so heavily on the Superman theme, the main theme. We talked about that, and that was kind of a drawback a little bit. It was something detrimental. We thought it's a good theme, it's a great theme, but it was just every scene was punctuated with it in Last Son of Krypton. Here, you have a couple new themes that are introduced. You have a Lex Luthor theme that is introduced. You had some good music in the dinosaur fight scene at the end, and then there was the chase scene. Also, you mentioned, you pointed that out first. You're like, "Hey, this is new. Like, it's like a 1940s like."
It's really jazzy.
Yeah.
It feels very much like it's a heist going on. So it fits pretty appropriately, but as Superman sort of chasing down these jetpack thieves, and he's fighting a guy with a flamethrower, and then a guy who has this like cool rope gun, and it sort of builds to this confrontation with this final thug, where the kryptonite is again introduced to him directly, but. Yeah, so the chase scene, especially as you mentioned, the scene where Lex Luthor is sort of basically, without saying those words directly, is telling Mercy to go kill this doctor. Starts talking about what a dangerous place Metropolis can be at night and all this stuff, and they manage to. Again, the Lex theme is very understated, much like, as we mentioned, his character is.
It's very subtle, very sneaky, very, it sounds like there's a flute or something in there. I'm not going to be in here diagnosing what instruments are used, but it is very, very, it's calming, but it's like sinister, I think is probably a good word for it. You can tell it's not over the top, it's not bang you over the head with the intensity of it, like the Superman theme, but at the same time you have, you can tell it's there, and it punctuates the scene.
Yeah, and then, of course, the dinosaur sequence at the end also has a pretty strong soundtrack of building from sort of the dread of Superman's in real bad shape to when the kryptonite is finally removed and he rips the jaw off of it, which I know they've mentioned, Bruce Timm and others have mentioned that they love anytime they get to use robots, because they can't really show any death or dismemberment in regular, because it's still a children's cartoon.
Right.
So anytime there's a robot, the robot had to get destroyed in some horrific way, and Superman rips the jaw in half, and so they do a pretty good job. So I went ahead, I gave music 8 out of 10.
Good.
It's like I said, it was just every time the music added a lot to it, As we mentioned, some episodes don't need that as much, but as much as this was a strong plot, I think the music also informed that plot and helped it be, and helped add that emotion, helped you feel the emotions they wanted you to feel.
Agreed. I agree with you. Yeah, I gave it I don't know if I said my score already, but I gave it a 7 out of 10 as well. We got, for all those reasons that we just covered. It's good. It's good to hear some variety in the music and to kind of introduce the music as an element to add to things, just like it was used in Batman the Animated Series. All right, headed home for this episode. We're going to wrap it up with voice acting. Liam, I gave voice acting also a 7 across the boards for this episode, totaling my score up at 28 out of 40. Voice acting, we talked about how, since this animated series relies so heavily on Dana Delaney, Tim Daly, and Clancy Brown, should a Superman episode start at a base at 5 if those guys are heavily featured in an episode? Because it's kind of standard. Those guys are the main characters. They're featured a lot. They're very talented. I think if we judged every episode based on just their performances, and we talked about some variety in the Tim Daly performances, I think, so that would maybe move it up a point or down a point regardless. But Clancy Brown and Dana Delaney are just steady, good.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say we already talked a little bit about his performance in this episode. He's great. It's the Clancy Brown show for this episode. He's relied upon. He has to communicate. Again, that sinister type behavior that he exhibits without being over the top and corny. So for his performance, I think his was a step above normal. I think he carried this episode very well. He has a conversation with Superman outside of his window again, which kind of links back to the first episode. And, he just plays that villain role so very well. He carries this episode, so 7 out of 10 was my score. What about you?
Yeah, I went 6 out of 10. There's a line, as you mentioned, that Superman and Lex have a confrontation, and it ends with Superman saying, "You'll never control me," and he flies out of the room. And the line is, "Well, then I guess I'll just have to kill you," which, if you give that to a lot of actors, that is not a supremely well-written line.
Right.
It's very simple. It's to the point. I'm not saying it's terrible or anything, but it's not the greatest villain line I've ever heard.
Agreed. It's a pretty standard. It sounds like something you could. If you told me that was a line, I might guess it was a Joker line. Because
Or I don't know, like Green Goblin in the Spider-Man cartoon or something could say that.
Agreed.
It's just a very generic villain thing to say.
Sure.
I can't control you, then I shall kill you.
Right.
But because of Clancy's delivery, it is it seems totally natural, and it's one of the better delivered lines in the whole episode. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I went 6 out of 10. I think Clancy's very strong. I think Dana Delaney is, as you mentioned, what you expect from her. Maybe not her strongest work, but still very good. I was a little down on Tim Daly in this episode. Mm-hmm. Now, this is still very early on in the show, obviously, and as far as production goes, so I think he certainly has times where he'll grow, but as far as they're trying to get him to show a few different emotions in this episode, or to say a few different emotions, if you want to speak, from an audio perspective, and from this, there's not a ton of difference in the way he delivers his lines from normal Superman to when he's angry and defiant against Lex.
He's pretty calm and steady.
Yeah. And then when he's being, when he's dying of radiation poisoning as the kryptonite is there, he's still pretty you had an interesting take on what you thought his kryptonite selling.
He gives a little Shatner performance in his words being broken. He's still finding his footing in that. I think he does a little bit better job in the next episode.
Yeah.
When we move on to that one, kind of finds his feet a little bit. But yeah, it was a little Shatner-esque.
Yeah, for sure. So, like I said, because of that, I went 6 out of 10. Not Tim Daly's strongest episode, but overall, I guess we can give our final scores here, and before we move on to our next episode, but. So my final score is 29 out of 40. A very strong episode.
Yeah.
Pretty much all around.
Yeah, I agree. Mine was 28 out of 40. It's It's a good episode. We remarked how fun it was. It's a fun episode to take something again. It's an episode about a rock, and they made it fun.
Yeah,
it's good.
And I think it's an episode maybe as you mentioned, you can have more of appreciation for if you come back to it when you're a bit older.
Yeah.
Like I remember when I was little, I don't like seeing to use pro wrestling terms. I don't like seeing Superman sell too much. When I was younger, when the hero is in like grave physical peril, I didn't really care for that as much. So yeah. I was never like a giant fan of Kryptonite episodes when I was younger. But
it's a weird plot device that could very well easily be abused, and I think that the Superman is a weakling plot device was used a lot in the very first couple episodes. I know we skipped over the Toyman episode, but I know there's something in there that they had to make it's Toyman, this guy who has a giant bobblehead on his body, a viable threat for Superman in some way. And then you have this episode. The next episode chronologically is a Parasite episode where Superman gets his powers zapped. Yeah. There's the Red Sun episode with Leitner. There's a lot of Superman not having his powers in order to make him, have formidable foes like that aren't just flicked with a flick of his finger and defeated. So I'm with you on that one. All right, so with that, why don't we move on to our next episode, Liam? We're doing a double episode this week. That, of course, is the first Metallo episode, The Way of All Flesh. We talked last week about the introduction of this John Corbin character. He's a mercenary. He's somebody that Lex is using to bring in some materials that he can't outright import or export legally, so he uses this guy as his, it's a shell type game that he's playing with this guy. He uses him as a way to get the armor to a foreign country that he couldn't do business with in that first episode. So in this episode, we find John Corbin, and he's in prison, and all of a sudden he's got, he's enjoying the finer things of life, and they keep referencing a friend that has helped him out. His whole cell is decked out. He's got a chandelier and a television, and is getting the finest of foods, really enjoying the finer things in life. And then all of a sudden he starts falling over and having chest pains, and it's not looking good for John Corbin. Yeah. And then in swoops his friend Lex Luthor, with this plan for him to put him in a metal body that will save him, but also coincidentally give him a heart of kryptonite. I guess the suit itself runs off of the radiation from the kryptonite. It's made of what they call metallo alloy, which is indestructible metal, according to the exposition that Luthor gives early on. And it runs off of, ironically, this material that has been shown to weaken and possibly defeat Superman. So it looks like a win-win for both of them until the very end, when we find out that Luthor was pulling the strings and was the one who, plot twist, was the one who gave this rare virus, made John Corbin contract it by putting it in his food. So you get a nice dynamic of, and we can jump right into plot for this. I gave the plot 9 out of 10 because I think, again, this is a great episode. It's a kind of a twist on your old guy needs a wish, or guy has a wish. Maybe it's not the classic, he necessarily wanted this to happen, but he gets this life-saving thing that appears to be, the thing that he absolutely needs, and then he finds out soon thereafter that there's a giant catch that comes with it. He can't feel, he can't smell, he can't experience what he calls pleasure, and all that implies. Yeah. He makes that pretty clear, and all that implies, and he, it's this dynamic at the beginning of the episode. He's enjoying the finer things, he's enjoying life, even though he's in prison. He's enjoying the life that he has there. Now he has freedom, and he's invulnerable to almost anything, but he can't feel or experience pleasure.
Yeah, and his descent throughout this episode is gradual. He doesn't immediately have a melodramatic tantrum about not being able to feel. He sort of notices as they're testing his strength that, hey, I can't feel anything, and I'm not hungry anymore. Right. And he sort of, kind of has like a confused look, and Lex is right there to put his hand on his shoulder and say, the only thing you should be hungry for is power. Right. And it's, again, that he's playing, the angel and the devil on Corbin's shoulders. trying to keep him, focused on killing Superman is what you need to focus on right now. And there's sort of some vague promises that they'll figure out a way to let him feel later, or
he definitely leads. We'll sort that all later, but right now you need to be focused on killing Superman.
Yeah, so it's gradual, and sort of as it's sort of revealed later by one of the doctors that when he said there needed to be adjustments made, he meant Corbin has to adjust to not being able to feel anything ever again. He didn't mean that they were going to make some sort of modification to his robot suit to let him feel things or eat or whatever.
It's a fascinating. I mean, it's done really well. This is another episode. I feel like those first 8 episodes of Superman we probably saw a lot. I feel like WB had those in the rotation pretty heavily. But this episode, I haven't seen it in a couple years. It's fun. It's good. Yeah. There's some good. When we get into voice acting, we'll talk about the voice acting performances. There's some good performances, but the plot story, Superman, Lex is manipulating this guy to try and get whatever he wants in order to kill Superman. And at the last second, as Superman is about to be killed, Superman pulls out and tells him, "Oh, look here, this is the virus that you were injected with by Lex Luthor's doctor."
Yeah.
So he's the one that you should hate. And then you have the dynamic of then Metallo now hating not only the person that put him in the body, but also Superman, and he has this equal hate between the two of them.
And sort of the slow descent from, as we said, into utter madness, and by the end he's just completely lost his mind. He's tearing off his flesh, and we'll get into that when we get into visuals, but revealing he's sort of half Corbin, half robot man now, and has fully become Metallo that we know from his subsequent appearances on the show. But it's so well done, and again, Luthor, as we mentioned in Little Piece of Home, he's the puppet master, and again, it would be really easy to make that story boring or repetitive.
Yep.
But him coming to Corbin as, "Hey, I'm your buddy here."
He calls him a friend at the beginning because he's the one supplying him with all this stuff in jail.
I'm going to save your life because you're my friend and you helped me out back in Last Son of Krypton. I'm going to help you now. Oh, and by the way, could you also kill Superman for me?
Right. It just happens that this works out to my...
Right. And sort of the reveal going forward, there's sort of a throwaway line by Lois of, well, Corbin could have contracted this disease anywhere because he was a mercenary. He was, he worked all over the world, so it's not a mystery why he, came down with this virus. But of course, so when that twist, that swerve, if you prefer the wrestling terminology, which of course I do, of the fact that Luthor himself injected Corbin with it, laced his fine food with this terrible virus, so he could put him into this robot suit, is such a great twist. So yeah, I don't know if I've said my score yet or not, but I went 9 out of 10.
Yep.
It was
both 9 out of 10 for that one.
Yeah, it was just really well done and really well executed.
Yeah, it's a good. I think it could have been a very, very easily could have been sort of a copy of the Two-Face episode. Tragedy, you feel bad, but you don't really feel bad. I mean, to a point you do, because Corbin was tricked into this, but he's already a bad guy. It's not good to bad. He's a bad guy who gets a bad break, so you kind of have that internal struggle. Do I feel bad for this person that is... He's already a bad guy, so should I feel bad for him that he was duped into this, by Lex?
Yeah.
Or does it just increase your hatred for Lex Luthor? It's like, this is a guy who doesn't care about anybody but himself.
Right, and there's the final moment of the episodes is there's an explosion, they fall into the water, Corbin sinks, and Lex is about to be eaten by a shark, and it reminded me of, there's the moment in Batman Begins where Batman lets Ra's al Ghul die.
Yeah.
And the line is, I don't have to save you or whatever, but Superman is not Batman.
Yep, he's better than all of us.
Even though he wouldn't be responsible for killing Lex, he grabs Lex literally out of the jaws of the shark and sits him on the pier and flies away. Because to me that's such a great... It's very simple. It's right at the end of the episode, but it's such a perfect Superman moment for describing who Superman is as a character.
I agree.
And why he's a little different than Green Lantern or Batman or anybody else that's out there.
Absolutely. He is the best of them. He's got good in him. He's a good person.
Yeah.
He's a good human being. Despite being born on another planet. All right, so let's jump to visuals. What did you think of visuals? We kind of touched on it a second ago in that final scene with the shark and Corbin drowning or apparently drowning. It's revealed very close at the end that he hasn't drowned. But so, what did you think of the animation and the visuals? And
it was pretty much as close to perfect as I think you're going to get. I went 8 out of 10 on mine. A lot of great stuff just from from when Corbin is first in his metallo body. He stops a train to get Superman's attention, and he basically stands on the tracks and smashes into it. And you see that all the train cars compress and sort of break, and the end of the train starts sort of falling off the tracks.
Yep.
I mentioned this in Little Piece of Home, but Metropolis again feels very lived in.
Yeah.
I like the idea that there's like a sky subway.
Yeah.
And also again establishing the difference between Gotham City, where Gotham City is grimy and it feels like maybe it's a little poorer of a city.
Definitely, it's absolutely poorer. It's the crime. The crime has kind of destroyed what was once may have been a thriving metropolis type city, is now dirty and broken and grimy
and that's reflected by Metropolis maybe is a bit more gentrified.
Right.
Maybe a little, there's maybe some areas that aren't nice, but most of what we see is it's sunny all the time there.
Yes.
As we mentioned, so much of the action takes place during the day and outside, and so again, I liked the visuals of the train scene. Superman and Metallo's fights are great. And then the final scene on the boat, some of the explosions that you see.
Oh, yeah.
The actual scene of Metallo ripping off his fake flesh.
It's cool that they chose, and I don't know if it was an animation decision. They didn't. That would probably have been really difficult to animate that properly. But it's cool that you see the shadow of him ripping it off first before they show the visual in the mirror. It's a little bit of a Two-Face reveal type thing where you don't see it kind of builds a suspense to the point where you see him. It's not as dramatic at all as the Two-Face reveal in the Two-Face episode, but it's cool that you see the shadow of it first, and then you're like, what the heck is he doing? And then you see the madness is developed into, oh well, now he's half man, half machine.
Yes.
So that I agree. I think that the final boat scene is really, really done really well. There's a part where Metallo has Luthor up on the, which I guess is the bow of the ship. I don't know. Whatever the front. I'm not a shipsman. I'm not a sailor. I don't know what this stuff is. But he's got him at the front of the boat, and he's trying to feed him the virus that he was injected with. And Superman lights some gasoline or something on fire that explodes. So there's this explosion, and you see the fire go up behind Metallo. He turns his face, and you see just his robotic half of his face. And the fire comes up behind him and creates this cool shadow across him. Really, really cool visual there.
Yeah, they basically, because Metallo and Superman had been fighting below deck, and they basically smashed through the floor / ceiling of the 2 floors below them. So yeah, the explosion it doesn't just explode the entire ship at once. The fire comes up first, and then the whole ship kind of cracks in half at that point. But yeah, again, that's a very nice thing. They didn't have to do that, but and maybe that comes into because the character designs are a little simpler and a little easier to keep on model. You're able to add little flourishes like that, like seeing rippling effects in the air when there's fire around. Or we didn't really talk about that on Last Son of Krypton, but we were talking about it here. And when you watch the opening of the show, you see those clips of as the ship is flying over, and you see the molten, all the volcanoes going off and everything. Just little touches that you sort of make up that lost detail that you have by simplifying the character designs. You can gain in some of the accoutrements of the rest of the visuals and animation.
Yeah, it's really good. I gave this episode a 10 out of 10 for visuals just
Wow.
because I thought it was so great. Even the last scene you pointed out, the scene where Corbin is drowning and he's struggling trying to swim, and then they take you underwater and he's still trying to he's underwater and sinking further and further underneath. It was great.
Bubbles coming out of his mouth.
He's talking. Yeah, he's trying to can't swim, and then the closing scene where Superman is being threatened by Lex and says, well, you can't pin this on me, and even if they found Metallo, I think you should be scared of him. And Superman kind of gets a jab back at him and says, well, if I wouldn't be the only one, or I'm not the only one who should be concerned about Corbin coming back. And then they flash to underneath the water at the ocean floor, the river floor, whatever, and you just see a figure walking and just his green heart glowing in the darkness of the water. It's such a great visual.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's really, really good. We talked about how between 8 and 10 in these episodes is kind of all the same. So because of that, why the heck not give it a 10 on my side?
I believe that's our first Super 10.
Super 10.
We've had plenty of Bat 10s, but this is our first Super 10.
That's right. All right, William, moving on to music. As far as music is concerned, I thought they built a little bit off of the momentum of last week's episode, or the episode that we covered before, in creating new themes for villains. Metallo has a very menacing Jaws-like theme, very repetitive over and over and over again, getting faster.
Yeah.
Some strings in there. It's good. It's a good theme. I didn't notice it as much. They kind of include it at the end, but there wasn't as much music in this episode. Maybe not a need for it either, because a lot of it is dialogue heavy, some exposition being done. Gave it a 6 out of 10. What about you?
Yeah, I went 5 out of 10. Like I said, the Metallo theme is very good. You still have the heroic beats when Superman comes to save Lex at the end, but overall, it's just not really a factor. This episode is so carried by the voice acting and the visuals that, as we mentioned in certain Batman episodes as well, there's just certain times that the music isn't needed as much to sort of convey the emotions or the feelings of the episode. So it's a little bit of an afterthought, but I do enjoy the Metallo theme. So it's certainly not bad, but yeah, it's not a standout the way it was in Little Piece of Home either.
Absolutely. All right, let's take us home. Let's talk about voice acting. What'd you give voice acting?
I went 9 out of 10 for voice acting.
Nice.
It's another Clancy Brown. Obviously, as we mentioned, we're kind of doing a Lex Kryptonite Metallo theme here. And Clancy Brown is pretty excellent, as we mentioned, being the... I'm your buddy. I'm helping you here. And then sort of very quickly switching to the more sinister, traditional villain speak when Corbin is not in earshot, when he's just talking to Mercy or the Doctor or even just Superman, as you mentioned at the end of the episode, when he's kind of talking about how you could never pin this on me. He's very good. Malcolm McDowell as John Corbin / Metallo again here. He's very over the top. We talked a little bit before we went on the air. Reminds me a little bit of John Glover's performance as the Riddler in Batman. You can tell he's an actor who has spent a lot of time on the stage.
Yes,
he's very he's not holding back at all. He is he's very, so everything is very very dramatic, but it's a very dramatic change. But he doesn't come out of the gate going 100 miles an hour. When he's just sitting in the prison eating his food, he's pretty reserved.
Right.
And then, as we mentioned, the sort of slow descent from when he notices he can't feel anything or he can't taste anything, all the way through to by the end when he's trying to make Luthor drink the poison or the virus, where he's a madman at that point. He feels nothing but homicidal rage at that point. Few puns as well in there.
Yeah, he's a bit pun heavy in his delivery, which, as you know, I'm a pun enthusiast like my grandfather before
Absolutely.
me. But it was a little distracting to hear somebody so over the top. I think you're right. He puts on a good performance, and I'm curious as we go forward on some of those other Metallo episodes we have coming up, because I think there's at least 2 more. There's a Steel episode, and then isn't there one where the kids find the volcano episode as well? That's not the Steel episode, right?
No, that's a separate one. And then there's also everyone's favorite episode of Superman's Pal.
Oh, God.
Where Jimmy dates Metallo's girlfriend or something.
I've forgotten that one. I blocked that one out of my brain.
Yeah, that one was pretty bad. And another one that aired quite regularly on Kids WB back in the day. But we'll definitely be able to do a Metallo Part 2 episode.
I like that.
Coming up, but...
Yeah, so because of that, I mean, his voice acting is a little bit over the top. It isn't distracting, but it's a little cartoonish. I think when you get those, you mentioned, having classic actors, sometimes is good, sometimes it's a little bit of a detriment. He does a good performance. It's not a bad performance. It's just he's more accustomed to theater work and places where you have to be a little more over the top than that. So for that reason, I gave it a 7 out of 10. It's good. It's not bad. It's just I think that there's room for growth in it. Now I did just add a bonus point onto this. So your total for the episode looks like
it'll be 31 out of 40. My highest rated Superman so far.
That's right.
Superman's tracking pretty well as far as the average score goes. I think he's going to be at least at the start here. He's averaging a better score than Batman.
That's true. Wait till we get to some of these other episodes. We haven't done any Dr. Fate or Leitner Red Sun episodes. Oh boy. I did want to add a bonus point, and actually you pointed this out. I probably wouldn't have noticed it if you hadn't mentioned it. But so Batman the Animated Series, your character designs all wore the same clothes in every episode.
Yeah.
With the exception of course, the new Batman Adventures. When that came out, every character got a redesign. But even then, those characters wore the same clothes.
Yeah.
Bruce went from a brown and yellow suit from his Batman Animated Series days to a black with a red tie suit.
Right.
Barbara Gordon went from...
She had like a slightly different mini skirt.
Right. So, so there was some visual changes there, but pretty much everybody wears the same exact clothes. In this episode, it was cool to see Lois's outfit is the same as her standard purple jacket with white skirt, but they changed it up. It's a red and black motif, and then Clark, who usually has a blue, like paisley blue suit, or a sky blue suit maybe with a red tie. In this episode, he's wearing a gray suit, and it's call me a nerd. That's fine, but it's cool to see that these people don't just all wear the same clothes all the time, like every other cartoon character does in every cartoon.
Yeah, I mean, like Dick Grayson wore that same red vest and that sweater vest in every single time we ever saw him out of costume.
Do you think those? Well, we did see the one episode of Batman where he opens up his closet and he just has 40 of the same jacket. You remember that?
Yeah.
So it's confirmed that Bruce just loves that outfit so much. It's his signature.
I guess so.
You think he has his own clothing line? It's like the Bruce Wayne clothing line.
And just everything's brown and yellow.
He's just trying to get it over. He's trying to get the brown and yellow suit over. But yeah, it was cool to see a different change up, and that shows the difference between this episode, or this streamlined look versus the standard Batman the Animated Series look.
And again, that's maybe something you're able to do, is add those little flourishes and extras, as we mentioned, when you are able to simplify the base designs. You're able to make a few decisions like that. But that is absolutely a nice little touch that theoretically they work 5 days a week. You wouldn't think they'd wear the exact same outfit to work every single day.
Maybe they would. Bunch of smelly guys.
Yeah, I don't know.
Could also throw in, but I'm not going to, but in that Lex's casual turtleneck that he was wearing on his boat was pretty good too.
Yes, his blue blazer with white turtleneck.
Such a Sailor Lex outfit is great. My final score, by the way, 33 out of 40. Yours 31 out of 40. That's +1 for me with the bonus point. So we're just as usual, right around each other. We were talking about when's the first episode that we're going to actually disagree on, and we have a couple coming up that I think are going to be fun to go over. But with that said, thank you for listening today. We would love to hear your thoughts and feedback on these 2 episodes. How do you rank them? What do you think about these? Are we looking at these through red and blue rose-colored glasses, or are we kind of spot on with this. Should we rank things higher? What are your thoughts on that? Tweet Liam at DCAU Review on Twitter. Always love to hear from people, Liam, I know.
Yeah, absolutely. Love getting to talk about stuff. Obviously, we like talking about this stuff.
Obviously, we were recording a 49-minute podcast about it. We must like it.
Right. So I'd love to hear feedback on Twitter or our Facebook. You can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/DCA Review. Don't do as much interaction there just because there isn't Facebook makes it very hard to get your content to reach people.
Yep, they make you pay to do that. Yes. And even then, I don't think that works.
Yeah, not really.
They still have a lot of say in
But
how that works.
If you're a Facebooker and you prefer to interact with us this way, we'd be happy to talk to you there. But yeah, definitely go ahead and follow us at DCAU Review on Twitter, and we'll see you soon, hopefully.
Absolutely, and don't forget, of course, to subscribe to us on iTunes. Search the iTunes store for DCAU Review. Give us a 5-star review too, please, and thank you. It means a lot. It helps our podcast out immensely. So with that, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we will talk to you guys on the next episode.
Bye-bye.